Okay, so if you wasn't already aware, there was a recent mass shooting in New Zealand, Christchurch, and so it's always good to pay attention to what the government is instantly saying when an event like this happens. Of course, it was a tragedy, no doubt about that, and it's very sad that such things happen in our world. But given the current state of things, we all shouldn't be too surprised with how have the current situation we find ourselves in. We're in for some pretty hectic times in the future, folks. Regardless if it ends well or if it ends badly for humanity, we're going to go through a lot more um, stuff than we have already experienced. The ride's going to get pretty turbulent before we come out at the end. And of course, I'm hoping we get it comes out positive, but it's going to take a lot of work for the people who wish to create such a future. So, instantly, as soon as this happened, of course, the usual agenda that's been played out by many governments all over the world when such a thing like this happens is gun laws straight away. And similar things have happened in Australia and the UK, and it eventually leads to a banning of guns, which in itself seems a little bit silly, because it's the people that are the issue here, not the guns themselves. And if you take away the guns from good people, they lose the ability to defend themselves effectively against bad people, because bad people exist on this planet right now. It's just the way it is. So we need the means to defend ourselves. And so instantly you have the Prime Minister of New Zealand claiming that they need to very quickly move in and create new gun laws for this problem that's been for quite a while. You know that for many years there's been an attempt to remove or change the gun laws in New Zealand, but it's been denied every time, which I think is good. I think that people should have the right to arm themselves with guns if they feel the need to. But this could potentially be a false flag when you look into it a little bit deeper, and it's hard to talk to most people about this because they get so riled up in the emotionalism and the sensationalism, and the media does a great job of scaring people and does a huge spin on the whole story. So many people can't even be approached about this subject, I don't think, until it quietens down a little bit. Or maybe they should be approached. Maybe they need a big swift slap in the face. But that's up to each individual to judge whether or not it's actually necessary or will be of any benefit to talk about certain things with people. I am actually currently in New Zealand at the moment, although I'm not a resident here, and I can see I don't know anyone who is a New Zealand resident that I'm in contact with that could actually handle even talking about the fact that this may be a false flag. So you pick your battles wisely, folks. I know from my previous experience, I would sort of just jump in gun ho and try and, almost like very vehemently shouting at everyone who I think needs to hear this information. Especially 9/11. I was very big on 9/11 5 years ago. So yeah, there's a wise way to approach these things, but it's always important to see what the government is going to try and do next. It's for people that are already switched on to this stuff, it can be very obvious to see. And I mean, for one guy to do all of this so efficiently, and I don't know, just to be some random guy with just a malicious intent to have done this, sometimes for me it just doesn't quite make sense. So I don't know. I would advise everyone to do a bit more research. Supposedly there's a manifesto that has been published by the shooter, so it's suggesting all these things, and it's a very well documented document. So I can provide a link to a video that talks about this in depth. But yeah, just as always, folks, be wary of what the mainstream is doing. If they're putting the one hand out with all this information, look what the other hand's doing, and be wary of what the government may try and implement with this. As New Zealand is one of the few places left in the Western world where people can have guns quite easily, in comparison to where they're nearly outlawed in most places. So it's important to pay attention to this sort of stuff, and because there's no limit to what the government will do to try and keep the control that it has at the moment. And in the end, if the positivity really pulls its weight, which it potentially could very well do, it would all work out well in the end. But yeah, like I mentioned before, it's going to be a turbulent ride before we get there. So each of us has to do their own part, and so we can then influence the collective timeline and pull this ship around and really sort things out. And then again, it all comes down to the individual's self work and research and becoming more embodied and all of this stuff. And then, like, I didn't, maybe it's slightly different because I'm not a New Zealand resident, but I didn't feel fear at all when I heard this stuff. It was almost like, here we go again. You know, the same story rehashed, different place, different time. And it, and this stuff is happening all over the world, like all the time. You know, people are getting shot, but it's just like when it happens in people's backyard, they suddenly go, oh shit. It's interesting how the human psychological traits sort of manifest, and it's quite understandable, really. You know, people, they get caught up in their own lives and they don't look outside of what they're doing, and many people are just running so fast on this rat race wheel, just trying to survive, that it can be hard for them to look outside of the box. So I fully understand how it could be a shock for most people, but once you begin on this journey, you can really start to put the pieces together, and it can benefit you in not having fear in your life. You know, you can sort of, if you look at it like you're playing a game of chess, you can understand the moves of the darkness, and then you can counter them very effectively, at least in your own lives, and that has a snowball effect on everyone you encounter. At the very least, you can be this grounded, sort of embodied tree soul person that can provide comfort in times like this, and just, because people get very scared, like, not derogatory, but kind of like animals, and when they get scared, they think a lot less critically, and all round they're much easier to control. So you can see why the governments and the people who own the governments, you can see why they would want to keep people scared. And once you come to terms with the fact that 9/11 was orchestrated by these evil entities, then there's no limit to what they will do to try and keep their power. But in the end, ultimately, what we are facing is a global initiation, and so it's up to you to choose, if you haven't already, on where you would like to position yourselves on these times that we are facing. Because all of us have the opportunity to be able to evolve spiritually, especially if you're listening to this. You have the opportunity right now to change your life and move in a more positive direction and be of service to others, as that's what it's all about, being of service to others in time, especially in times like this when people are scared. So that's what it's about, and not fall into the service to self, fear, predator, prey dynamic, as that is a self-defeating loop, which we would do well to do everything we can to counter against. So that's the aim of the game, folks. Many of you are aware of this already, but this may be just a slight awakening call for those who haven't quite seen the bigger picture just yet. There is an agenda afoot, but what's pretty interesting as well is that this agenda indirectly serves the divine in causing more people to be question themselves and awaken to themselves and this reality that we are in. So it's an interesting time to be alive, folks, and I'm very, very I'm excited actually to see where it's going to go. These next 10 to 15 years, they're going to be some turbulent times. We're just seeing the beginning of the craziness, in my personal opinion. And who knows, in 20 years to 30 years, it may be clear what's the outcome of these times. But who can say for sure, right? It's, the future is not set in stone, and it's constantly changing by the choices we make every single day. So remember your power in all of this, because you really do have huge power to change this world, and it begins with changing your world. You change your world, and then indirectly you affect the collective timeline. So be wary, folks, and look what the other hand is doing, as always, and stay strong. Thank you.